I'm writing a book about why Jerusalem matters. Jerusalem matters because it's the focal point of the world's three great monotheistic religions. Jerusalem is the heart of the biblical story. It's also a very complicated place. Thank you. I'm Dr. Chris McKinny. I'm an archaeologist and biblical scholar. Chapter 1, Jerusalem is the center of the world. When someone comes to Jerusalem, they don't see David's city. They don't see Herod the Great city that he built. They can't even go to Constantine's city. They see a mosaic of jumbled buildings, of stones. And part of my job as an archaeologist, as a scholar, is to try and get to every single city, understand what it looks like, and then connect the story so we understand why Jerusalem is important, not only overall, but to every single period.
The city is alive and changing all of the time. For 40 centuries, conquerors have made their marks and scars across Jerusalem's holy hills and valleys. I love Jerusalem. I've walked these streets thousands of times. It's a city with a story behind every corner. Where should we begin? To get our bearings, I'm going to take you to a high point to show you a snapshot of the holiest places in Jerusalem.
Behind me is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. When the Crusaders conquered Jerusalem, they built a church here, over a church that had been commemorating the place of Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. If we look here, we can see the Dome of the Rock. According to Muslim tradition, this is where Muhammad has his night vision. In Jewish tradition, this is where the temples were, where God entered into the presence of Jerusalem, into the city. In all three traditions, this is where heaven and earth meet. I'm headed to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the holiest site in Christianity.
Jerusalem is built in layers. The easiest layer of Jerusalem to understand is this top layer, the city that the Crusader kings built. The first important date for us to remember is 1099 AD. This is when the Crusader kings conquered Jerusalem. They came here because their faith was under attack. An Islamic caliph from Egypt had destroyed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The Crusaders came here to reconquer Jerusalem because the city was the center of their faith.
So now we're sitting in the courtyard in front of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Why is this place significant? Why were the Crusaders wanting to come here to reconquer the city? Because this is the focal point of the world for Christians. We have these beautiful maps that show Jerusalem as the center of the whole world. And the center of Jerusalem is this very church. For Christians, this is the focal point. Now, the Crusaders build this magnificent basilica over an earlier church that was destroyed that goes all the way back to the beginning of Christianity in the Roman Empire. And that church sits over the tomb of Jesus and Golgotha, traditional locations where Christians believe was the place where their Savior died, was buried, and was raised from the dead. So we're hearing right now the procession of the Catholic Church inside the area of the tomb. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre today is under 4 different main churches. We have the Catholic Church, we also have the Greek Orthodox, the Armenians, and the Coptics. And so right now, there's a procession in a shared space. It's their time of day to come to the area of the tomb. Let's see if we can get a better look.
The tomb of Jesus has been the holiest place in Christianity for 2,000 years. For a city 4,000 years old, the Crusades are actually a recent event. To understand the centrality of Jerusalem, we need to go further back in time. The symbol of Jerusalem today is the Dome of the Rock, a beautiful structure that is 400 years older than Crusader Jerusalem. The Dome of the Rock is an Islamic shrine that covers an actual rock. I'm going to give you the next key date to remember, 638 AD. This is the year that Jerusalem was conquered by the Muslims. Muslims call Jerusalem El-Quds, which means the holy city. Islamic belief maintains all of the earlier connections to Jerusalem as the city of Ibrahim, Dawood, and Isa, or as they are more commonly called in English, Abraham, David, and Jesus. But Muslims focus on Jerusalem as the location of the farthest mosque, or Al-Aqsa, the location where Muhammad ascended to heaven on Buraq, his horse. Today, Haram al-Sharif, also known as the Temple Mount, is a place of vibrant Islamic worship, as it is one of the focal points that the Muezzin call the faithful to pray 5 times a day. A soul-stirring sound that has echoed through Jerusalem streets for 14 centuries.
واغفر إلهي لكل المسلمين يتلوه في المسجد الأقصى وبالحرم.
The Muslim layer is still very visible today. But of the layers that you see, there's an even older layer that marks the city, Roman Jerusalem. This layer is the golden age of Jerusalem, when the second Jewish temple stood on the Temple Mount in all of its glory. The last key date to remember is 70 AD, when the Romans destroyed this Jewish temple. Even though Jerusalem was destroyed 2,000 years ago, the impact of Roman Jerusalem's destruction can still be felt today.
I'm standing right now inside of the Western Wall complex. Above me, you can see the Dome of the Rock. This is where the temple would have stood 2,000 years ago. It was destroyed, and since then, the Western Wall has been the focal point of Judaism.
This is actually the western foundation of the massive compound on which the temple stood. Since the temple's destruction, the Western Wall is as close as Jews could get to where the temple once stood. Today, what can be seen from the Roman period is mostly the support structure for the ancient Jewish temple complex.
So I'm standing inside of an area of the Western Wall, and I'm underneath what's called Wilson's Arch. This arch is actually part of a bridge that allowed people to come from the area of the upper city to the temple. It also brought water to the temple precinct during the time of Jesus.
This place is sacred for Jewish worship and celebration. The Western Wall symbolizes Jerusalem, deeply concerned with proximity to ancient holy places, but also a real place where the faithful daily encounter the divine, but then have to take the bus home. The holy city is always changing, but one thing remains constant. Jerusalem is where the past and the present continue to meet.
The Temple Mount is the center of the world. It's the heart of Jerusalem. All 3 great monotheistic religions have some connection there. For Jews, this is the temple that Solomon built, that Herod the Great expanded. For Muslims, Muhammad has his night vision here. For Christians, this is the place where Jesus interacted all throughout his ministry and died and was raised from the dead nearby. This is the conclusion of chapter 1, but we're just beginning the story.